As the fallout continues for the Liberals on their big by-election loss in Toronto St. Paul's, questions remain whether or not Justin Trudeau is going to stay on as leader. Hello, I'm Adrienne Batra. With me are Brian Lilley and Lorrie Goldstein. You know, Lorrie, there are a number of Liberals who, look, we've been covering them for a very long time. Normally, they have their fights in private, and then they are very unified and together in public. Something is different this time. There seem to be more and more Liberals who are willing to say the quiet part out loud, that the Toronto St. Paul's by-election loss is in large part due to Trudeau and his leadership of the Liberal Party. People just couldn't vote for him. And it would seem poll after poll telling us Canadians are pretty much done with him either. We're tired of Trudeau. So what does Justin Trudeau do? Well, he goes into a South Asian festival and he starts dancing because apparently there's, sticks his fingers in his ears, Lorrie, and it's pretending it's not happening. But the questions aren't going away. And it's not just in the media, not just the Toronto Sun. The call is coming from inside the House.
Well, look, the Liberals are always good at unity when they're talking about disagreements over policy. Liberals do have message discipline in that sense. Not surprising, they're the government. You don't want to come out and as your cabinet minister and MP and disagree with what cabinet or the prime minister says. But this is about political survival. And politicians are human beings. It's not just Toronto St. Paul's. It's been a year of polling, which shows they're heading into, if nothing changes, a massacre. After St. Paul's, there was one pollster who said, if those numbers were to apply across province of Ontario, they could lose 55 seats. That would be a historic defeat. So they're worried about their own political survival. And our editorial today says there's kind of a delicious irony here, which is that the Liberal caucus is now faced with what many Canadians have been faced with when they ask for an answer from Trudeau. They don't get one.
Yeah.
And so that's what he's doing everything's fine. I'm going to these community events. I'm giving political speeches. I'm going to the NATO meeting, next week. And so it's just pretending that avoiding the elephant in the room by pretending it doesn't exist, but it does exist. And to me, like some of these Liberals are calling for a national caucus meeting. They want one immediately. Okay, you don't need the prime minister to give you permission to have a national caucus meeting. You're the national caucus. You want to have a meeting? Go ahead. What they'd like to do is have Trudeau there so they can have a full and frank discussion. But the bottom line is this whole thing is on hold. It's a stalled train until Trudeau decides what to do. He can say, well, we're still more than a year away from the election and yada, yada, yada. But he's got to decide pretty soon because he's running out of room. If he doesn't do it by fall at the latest, then by de facto, he's running again because there won't be enough time to get a new leader.
Brian, I think that there have been signs for a very long time. Look, Trudeau's been playing at being prime minister for pretty much since he got elected. He's unserious government. But one of the things that you can sort of take comfort in is perhaps there are some people around the table, then the cabinet table, that are the so-called adult in the room and really need to do important things and move files forward for Canadians. But we don't even have that to fall back on. And so this long cascade of names of potential replacements for Trudeau are out there. Overtly now. We talked about Mark Carney in the past. It seems to be a big deal now that he's
drinkers.
Yes, right, exactly. He's tweeting about beer, and now he's tweeting in English and then in French. He's posting things on X in both official languages, and to the average person, they're like, "Well, who gives a darn about that?" But that is meaningful, and so let's read some tea leaves on who's putting themselves out there a bit more overtly.
Well, I'm going to give a shameless plug for the Full Comment podcast, which I host. Had a young guy on named Andrew Perez. Well, he's young to me, he's young to Lorrie. This is a guy who's been inside the Liberal Party for 20 years. He's calling for change, and his view is it's got to be an outsider. And Andrew and I talk at length about Mark Carney and whether he can do it. Will he be able to communicate? But he had an interesting point, and he said he thinks it's got to be someone who is an outsider but knows how politics works. Thus, Christy Clark, the former BC premier, who had an amazing comeback in 2013. I was there in the room broadcasting live when she won on a night when we all expected she was going to lose to the NDP. So that's an interesting name. Christy Clark. Mark Carney is obviously doing it. Francois Philippe Champagne, Frankie Bubbles, as I call him. He's out there doing competing news conferences with the PM in the same city at the same time. That's not something that normally happens. So is that his little leadership push, trying to show that he can draw eyeballs as well? Melanie Joly, unfortunately, still in there. She would, make Canada a full member of Team Hamas if she became prime minister. Who else? Anita Anand. Nobody knows who she is. She may be competent. She may be smart, but she doesn't have name profile. She wouldn't be someone that could turn it around. And of course, Dominic LeBlanc, we know that he's out there. And despite him being the closest person of every name we've mentioned, well, other than Chrystia Freeland, he would be a disaster for the Liberal, or he's the only one that wouldn't be a disaster for the Liberal Party. I think he could actually do a decent job at running. But at this point, I can't see any of them turning around. That said, voters are fickle, polls change, campaigns matter. It's a long way till Election Day.
Lorrie, our American friends are in a similar situation where they have now seen their president in an obvious cognitive decline. The calls and the yells from the Democrats to replace Joe Biden on the ticket for their November election are growing louder and louder. So it's not lost on me that we here in Canada are finding ourselves in a situation where we've been calling for Trudeau to leave for a long time, like we, meaning the Toronto Sun editorial board, but now Liberals are doing it, and just like the Democrats are doing it to Joe Biden. These two leaders have the NATO summit coming up in the next couple of weeks that the U.S. is hosting. Trudeau, it's a challenging time, certainly for incumbents. We've seen that all over the world for other leaders. But let's just say Trudeau fast forwards to next year. He's still there. He's still leader. He will be one of the longest serving prime ministers that we've had. But he's also looking at allies around that the world table that are not there anymore for their own electoral loss or whatever the case may be. But just it at home in this country, he doesn't seem to have the friends and allies around his own cabinet and caucus table that perhaps he thought he used to. There used to be such a strong grip from the PMO. Is that grip slipping because we see more and more Liberals saying, okay, we won the National Caucus meeting. We want to have a conversation. We have other Liberals overtly writing letters and saying, time for you to go. Does that matter to Trudeau? Does he care, or is he just needs to line up his next gig and then he will move on?
I think that his main driver, I believe him when he does not want to lose to Pierre Poilievre. I think that's what's killing him. If I leave, okay, fine, but I want to take this guy on because he's not had a chance in an election to take him on. So from his logic, they gave me two other leaders. I smoked them. Well, they didn't smoke them, but I ended up winning those elections. I defeated Harper. I think the thing that most concerns him will be the perception that he's running from a fight. To me, that's an unwise perception because it is wise to run from a fight that it looks like you can't win. As conservatives, as a conservative newspaper, I hope Trudeau runs again. That would be great. I mean, it would be. I mean, come on, for us, it would be wonderful.
Oh yes, we always say good for business, bad for the country, but nonetheless.
But like it's also it's not my job or our job to tell Trudeau what to do. But I think the biggest thing that's driving him, yes, he's an actor. Yes, he has a big ego. You have to have a big ego if you want to be the prime minister because the job's insane. Just like but I think the biggest thing in him is his competitive. He does not want to be seen as being scared of Poilievre and bring his tail behind his legs. And
if I could tie something to each of you said together, longest serving, doesn't want to lose. Apparently, if he goes till that time, he will beat out Harper by a few days in terms of longevity. And, I've got some readers telling me they think that is a motivating factor.
Yeah, the logical thing for me, though, would be to look at recent political history. Prime ministers have a shelf life of about 8 to 9 years and 2 elections. Or now he's had 3, but one of them's been a minority. But Harper, exactly as you mentioned, Harper went out after 9 years. Mulroney went out after 8 years. Chrétien a little over that because he had that 3rd election, which his party was terrified of him calling, and where he won a majority. But I think, if I had that job, I would be thinking, I'm here for 8 years, 2 elections. I want to get a majority. I want to do what I want to do, and then I want to leave, right? Because that was the original idea of political leaders like this, that this wasn't a job for life. It was the same thing for MPs. You go in there, you're smart, you're energetic, you have other options. You go in there for a couple terms, you do what you want to do, and you leave. And now we have this idea of, prime ministers and politicians who think they should be there for 10, 15, 20 years. No, well, that's insane. For one thing, you lose your energy. You lose the passion that you have. So to me, it would be logical for Trudeau to leave. But I note that on this issue, he's just not being logical.
Brian, last word to you. I just want to sort of put a fine point on this. The Trudeau, I believe Lorrie's right. I think that he feels he is the only one that can protect our democracy, their words, not mine, protect our democracy from Pierre Poilievre and these evil factions that they think could potentially take over this country. It's absurd. It's crazy. We all know that. But let's just compare what Trudeau's summer is going to look like versus what Pierre Poilievre is doing. Poilievre just is in a minivan, a truck with his family. It's an RV all summer long. They're traveling around Quebec. He just put out this, very, very, I think, thoughtful video showing the family going on around different parts of Quebec. They're making an effort there that you haven't seen from a Conservative party in a long time in the province of Quebec. Whether it translates into seats is another story. But compare that to what we see with Trudeau, private meetings, small groups. Yeah, he'll do the stampede. Yeah, he'll do the pancake flipping. Yeah, he'll do this and that.
He's skipping stampede.
Skipping stampede.
I'm sorry, I didn't appreciate that.
He was supposed to go and they just canceled.
Well, there you go.
So I mean, there's his summer, Adrienne. He's canceled stampede. He's going to book to go to a cottage somewhere and be alone. He says, for the most part, avoided the media. He's done an interview with CBC. Seems that's the only place he'll talk to people now is CBC, where he said he's looking forward to many, many more Canada Days as Prime Minister. I think the public has a different view. He's just going to be dogged by this question. Are you staying or are you going? Are you going to take a walk in the Tofino Sands since we don't have any snow for you to walk in? His summer is going to be hell. And Pierre Poilievre's going to be going around the barbecue circuit, being lauded by people who are going to show him love. And it's going to be like that from now until he's munching apples in our face this fall.
Well, let us know what you think in the comments below. Like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel and go to thetorontosun.com. You'll find commentary and coverage there you will not find anywhere else.